Hello again. So today's video, I wanted to talk about my pregnancy. And I'm going to go over from whenever I found out I was pregnant, and then probably not my entire pregnancy, but just some of the things that happened while I was pregnant. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was really excited. I knew that it wasn't really like an ideal situation. We weren't married, we weren't living together, but things were going really well. At that point, we had been together for, I would say, like almost a year, maybe 10 months or 11 months or something. And I had seen a few red flags, but it wasn't like really bad yet. So I found out I was pregnant, and I really thought that that was going to change things, that we would become a team and that he would be excited and maybe that would change him. I guess I maybe was a little bit delusional. I'm not sure. I don't know really why I thought that, but that is not what happened. So when I found out I was pregnant and I told him, he maybe acted excited for like the first day, maybe even the first week. Not as excited about it as I was, but he was excited, I guess, in his own way. So shortly after I found out, he told me that I had to ask for a raise at work. And at the time, I was working in a job, I was in IT at a hospital, and I was an analyst. So I made pretty good money. I was a salary employee, and I had just gotten a very big raise at work. And when he had met me, I had that job. So I was already supporting my own household, running my household, paying my car payment, my own bills. So he said that I had to ask for a raise at work. And at the time, I didn't want to tell them I was pregnant yet because I was just kind of waiting it out a little bit. We were in the process of a big build at work for a new computer medical record system. And then they told me that they were flying me out to Kansas City to do some training, and it would have been right around the time that I was like due. So I had to tell them I was pregnant because I didn't want them to buy me a plane ticket and book all of my business trip if I couldn't go. So he wanted me to wait to tell them until after I asked for a raise. Well, I went and told them, and he got so mad at me for telling them that I was pregnant. And he told me that he would not be taken advantage of and just lost his mind. Now, the funny thing is, at that point, he wasn't even financially supporting me at all. I mean, not a penny. I had my own house, my own car, my own bills, and he had his own house. He lived an hour and 10 minutes away from me still. Now, he did come and stay at my house, so he would stay at my house, use my utilities, my internet, my heat. He slept in my bed. He would use all of my stuff, eat my dinner, eat all my food that I made, and then I meal prepped my lunches because at the time I was really into like bodybuilding, and he wanted me to pack his too. He didn't pay for his own food, so I paid for my food and his food, meal prep for both of us for the week. And he let me do all of that, but then told me that he wasn't going to be taken advantage of because I was having his baby. So right there, I should have known something was very wrong. And it didn't feel right. Like, there was a lot of times in that period where we had gotten into huge fights and I'd break up with him and then I would take him back because I was pregnant. And another red flag was while I was pregnant, his mom, she's a lot like him. So she was kind of like, at first, hid a lot of things from me, I guess. And then while I was pregnant, she told me that the things that he told me about his ex-wife, she was like, oh, just so you know, it wasn't all just crazy ex-wife. And then she had asked me if he ever hit me, which he never did. And then she started questioning me about things like, about how he treats me. So I knew she knew how he was. And that almost like they kind of hid it from me or made me, at the beginning, I guess, tested it out. Maybe he'd be different with me. I don't know. But I feel like this is just who he is, and they all kind of knew it because they would all be like, oh, I can't wait to meet the girl that tamed the wild beast or whatever, because I was like the first woman that he settled down with. Well, little did they know, I was literally sacrificing my soul to stay with him, and no other woman was willing to do that, I guess. They were all smarter than me. But so what I thought was crazy was that he would say all of that he wasn't being taken advantage of and that I needed to ask for a raise while he's sitting there sucking from me and giving me nothing in return. And then on the weekends, so Monday through Friday, we stayed at my house because my work was like 30 minutes in the other direction from my house, or 35 minutes. And my kid's daycare was here and everything. So if we stayed at his house, it would be like an hour and 10 minutes to get here, then another 35, 40 minutes for me to get to work. And he traveled kind of all over the place for work. So it just made more sense. And the kids' school was at my house, so we just stayed at my house during the week. And then on the weekends, he was always off on Fridays, so he would load up the dogs on Friday morning and drive out to his house. And then I would meet him at his house after I got off work. I'd pick up the kids, run home, grab our bags, and then go out to his house for the weekend. So on the weekend, I would load up the kids, go out to his house. I would cook for the whole weekend. I would clean his house, clean out his fridge, wash all of his bedding. He did stay at his house a couple nights a week during the week as well. I would help him mow his grass, rake, weed. He had a vegetable garden. I'd go out and like weed his garden and water everything and pick vegetables, and I just helped him, you know. I helped him with anything he needed help with. Sometimes we would mow, sometimes we would like cut weeds on the trail. I'd help him hang like deer cameras and stuff. And it didn't take me long to realize, like, now granted, he did once in a while a couple things around my house, little things, not very often. not enough to make up for everything I was doing to help him. So I won't discredit him completely. He did do a few things to help me. But a lot of our marriage and relationship was always mostly him taking from me and me giving, and then me really getting nothing in return. So that went on throughout my entire pregnancy. And then the one night, I would say I was about like 4 months pregnant, maybe. So first of all, he didn't come to any of my doctor's appointments, none of them. And he always said it was because of work. So I went and paid for one of those ultrasounds where you could find out the gender. It wasn't medical. It was just like one of those little ultrasound clinics. And we paid for the gender to find out early at like 15 or 16 weeks. He came to that ultrasound, but he didn't come to any other appointments. And I didn't make a big deal out of it because I know his work is important to him, and I didn't say anything. But that kind of did bother me sometimes. So then when I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant, he had left his tablet in my room. He had like a Samsung tablet, and my TV in my bedroom had a casting device. So we would use the tablet to get into like Netflix, Disney, and like cast to the TV to watch movies. It didn't have a traditional remote. So that tablet laid on my nightstand the whole time we had been together. So over a year at this point, 15 months or 16 months or something. Well, I picked it up the one night and he wasn't there. He was at his house to stream on the TV like we had always done. He left it there. I knew the password to get into it. That's what we used for a remote in my bedroom. And when I opened it, an Instagram account came up, which I did not know he had. And on it was all pictures of him at the gym, flexing, and not like inappropriate or anything, but very much so looked like he was single. And when I scrolled through it, it was pretty much all women and all commenting about how good looking he was and him just enjoying the attention. And then all of the things that he was doing on there were putting hearts on all these women's pictures where they were half dressed and very inappropriate pictures. So that really hurt my feelings. I found a lot of other things on there that were extremely inappropriate, like things that he had been watching, as you can imagine, things that he'd be watching. And he did have multiple social media accounts on there that I didn't know he had, that he was like hiding from me. I had also found that he had been talking to other women behind my back, and one of them called him daddy. I'm not quite sure why. And the conversation she said about how she had gone to court and how the divorce was going, and he said, see, I told you everything was going to work out, but there was nowhere in the conversation where he said that, so I know that he had to have met with her at some point, but he refused to tell me any information. So then, of course, I got curious, so I went to get into his phone one night after I found all of that, and he changed his passcode. And then whenever I brought it up, he called me a psycho for bringing it up, and that I shouldn't have been snooping through his tablet, and I really wasn't. I unlocked it, and immediately that's what popped up. So then, of course, I did snoop a little bit because I was curious. So that whole thing ended with him moving out. Of course, he left me. That was his go-to move. Anytime I brought up anything that hurt me that he did, he always left me. That was like the first thing he did. So he screamed at me. He flipped out. He told me that I was a psycho for snooping through his stuff. He packed all of his stuff that was at my house. He took his dog. And he made it always a big production, like screaming and throwing stuff and breaking stuff. And that night I cried. That was the first like huge fight that we had. And I really did think it was the end. And I was pregnant, and I was just, like my mind was just reeling with, how are we going to do this? And what just happened? That was the first time I had caught him like cheating on me. And I just was hurt. I really was. My cousin came over and spent the night with me, and me and her just kind of laid in my bed, and she helped me through the night. Like I just cried. I didn't sleep at all. And then slowly he started to like work his way back in. That's what he would do. He would kind of like pick at me to see how I was feeling. And then once he saw like an opening, he would either cry or tell me that he was sorry. It always ended up like that. And then I would take him back. So that's what happened. And I took him back. And as soon as he came back, everything was different between us. He mostly slept on the couch, and he would say like he couldn't get comfortable in the bed anymore, or that he was afraid he was going to hurt the baby. I don't know. He just always had an excuse. Now, mind you, I'm pregnant. The baby's not born yet. But that's what he would always say. And any type of intimate relationship went out the door. There was not really any affection. There was not really much connection. He didn't take me on like dates. He didn't like post about the baby. He didn't get excited about the baby. He didn't buy anything for the baby. It was mostly just like he was in denial that the baby was even coming, and I was the one planning and doing everything. So he worked Monday through Thursday, was off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The plan had always been that Friday he was going to watch the baby. So I went and found a daycare, which was where my other kids went, signed the baby up. It was going to be 4 days a week that he was going to go. And Alex was going to keep the baby Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And he didn't. I'll tell you that later. He did not keep the baby. But, so I just ended up feeling like, I don't know, I've never felt that alone in my entire life. I had also kind of isolated myself in a sense to just being with him, because like I said, Monday through Friday, he was usually at my house at least 2 or 3 days. Then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would be at his house. So I didn't have any friends outside of him anymore. And my family and me, like my family's always been there for me, but I wasn't super close with them at that time because I had poured so much into him that I had never branched out from him. Like I didn't hang out with my family really anymore besides holidays and stuff. I didn't like call them all the time. He was like my person. So I poured everything into him. And that was hard for me because I felt alone and I really didn't have anywhere to turn to. And I just felt like, I don't know, I never felt that kind of stress before. When I'm stressed, I don't really eat because I get like this weird butterfly feeling in my stomach. So I didn't eat very much my whole entire pregnancy. Thank God my baby was like 8 pounds, 2 ounces. So he was very healthy and fine, but I only gained, I think, 16 pounds. I couldn't sleep. I just would lay awake and toss and turn and cry. I couldn't bring anything up to him. If I would bring up to him that he was hurting me or that him sleeping on the couch was hurting me, it always ended up with he'd give me the silent treatment, and then he would scream at me, like scream at me until like veins were popping out of his neck and spit was coming out. And I couldn't I couldn't even talk. I couldn't get anything out. If I said, it really hurts me when you sleep on the couch because I feel like you don't love me, or I feel like we're disconnected, or I feel like I don't even know you anymore, that's just simply saying that I feel something. I'm not accusing you. I'm not saying that you're doing this and you're doing that. I'm saying that when you do this, it makes me feel this. That's normal human interaction. That should be able to be done in a marriage. You should be able to say that something that you're doing is hurting me. And to say that to your husband and to get screamed at, I didn't know at the time, but that was the beginning of the training. So over time, it trains you to quit talking about your feelings, to quit saying, when you do this, it makes me feel this, because that's an ego hit to him. When I would say that you're hurting me, he doesn't want to hear that. He does not want to hear that he's hurting me, that he's bothering me, that something he did was wrong. You're not allowed to talk about that. You're not allowed to bring up anything that he did. You sit there, and you be quiet, and you be happy, no matter what he's doing. That's what he wants. So I learned that over time, but at that point I hadn't learned it yet. And we had a lot of fights during my pregnancy and a lot of breakups during my pregnancy. So at the time, I guess I didn't have the wording for it or the knowledge, but I was in an abusive relationship and I didn't know it. I was thinking that it was just like normal fighting or normal disagreements, or what he would always say was that he was scared. He was scared about becoming a dad. And I just believed him. I didn't know any different. I really didn't. I had no experience with anything like that. I had no idea that somebody could do that to you. I didn't see a cycle. I didn't see a pattern. I just stayed in survival mode. I just tried to live day to day, and that's all I did. I didn't know any different. So while I was pregnant, all of that happened, and then when I had him, the day that I had him, he did fall in love with the baby, and he was in the hospital. He was so excited. You could just see it in his face. He cried. He was so happy. He was excited. The day that I had him, he left for a couple of hours and I think he went home maybe and took care of the dogs or something, came back. And when he came back, he told me, he always had a way of making everything about him. So there I am, laying in the hospital, just delivered the baby. He comes in and he's like, oh, I got a new job and I accepted a new job. And he took a pipelining job and he was leaving. I had him on a Monday. He was leaving the following Monday for another state, like 5 hours away, 5 or 6 hours away, for months, like months at a time. And I was like, you're supposed to watch the baby on Fridays. Well, I'm not doing that now. Yeah, I took this job. I'll be leaving on Monday and I'm traveling out of town, so you have to figure it out. So I had to call my daycare lady as soon as I literally delivered the baby and make sure she could keep him on Fridays to get that all taken care of. He stayed with me the first night, so he was born on a Monday. He stayed with me the first night. Tuesday, he got up and left, and he never came back to the hospital. He told me that he wanted to sleep in his own bed and that the hospital was too uncomfortable and that he couldn't get any sleep. So he asked his mom to come and stay with me. And I liked his mom, so she came and stayed with me, and then she's the one that actually took me and the baby home the day that we got discharged. He never came back. He never took us home. He went, and the day I came home from the hospital, he wasn't there. He said he was going to sign all of the paperwork for the new job, and I couldn't get a hold of him for 6 hours the day that I came home from the hospital. And to this day, I don't know where he was. I have my suspicions on where he was because I found some evidence later on that I'll talk about. But yeah, I do believe that he was cheating on me. And he wouldn't answer his phone for 6 hours. And then when I finally got a hold of him, he called me a psycho and told me that I need to quit blowing up his phone. When I literally just delivered his son and came home from the hospital that day and couldn't get a hold of him for 6 hours. So these are some of the things that I went through. And people might think I'm stupid. People might say, why would you stay? Why would you put up with that? But honestly, I didn't know. I just had no idea. And looking back now, yeah, it's easy to say like, oh my gosh, why would you ever do that? Why would you ever deal with that? Why would you ever stay with somebody like that? But living in it, I had no idea. Living in it, I couldn't see it. So I just want to encourage you that if you're pregnant or if you already have a child with somebody and you've experienced any of these things, you're not alone. These are things that now that I know, now that I have some context and I look it up, these are things that happen in abusive relationships. And I had no idea. So I want you to be encouraged that if you're living through that right now, that you're not alone. And this is abuse. This is a pattern. If you look closely at your relationship, you can see a pattern. There's always a pattern. It always starts with something triggers them. They give you the silent treatment. They go into an anger outburst. They discard you. And then they typically start the love bombing over again. And that's the pattern that I lived in for 9 years. And I just want to encourage you today. Love is not supposed to look like that. That is not how love is supposed to look. I'm not an expert on love, but I just know that that is not how it's supposed to look. I know how I love people, and I love in what I would consider a healthy way. I don't have stipulations. I don't have any type of conditions. I just love people. So if you're living under a love like that, that is not what love should look like. And you should not feel like that when you're pregnant. And don't let somebody ruin the beautiful moments of your life like that. My pregnancy, I hate to say it was ruined, but it was ruined because I lived in constant anxiety, constant sadness and depression. And when he was born and I came home from the hospital, the day I brought him home from the hospital should have been like the most exciting day of my life. He disappeared for 6 hours and I couldn't find him, my husband. And then that was a Wednesday, and then the following Monday he left for another state, and he didn't come back for 3 months. So those are the types of things like I want you to think about that should not be normal, and they should not be okay, and we should never have to put up with that. So I want to share how the abuse escalated once my son was born, and the things that he did to manipulate me and control me that, once again, I never saw until looking back now. I'm like, why did I stay? Why did I do that? But I hope that sharing my story gives you some insight or some encouragement, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you can help somebody else that's going through it. Because from the outside looking in, nobody knew what I was going through. But honestly, I didn't even know what I was going through. But looking back now, I see the times that should have been such a blessing in my life just were not. And they were all because of him. So I hope that I can encourage you, and I hope that you stick around and we can share stories and help each other to grow. Until next time, God bless.